Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 39 Days with Alex and Andrew. I'm Alex Weir. That's Andrew Natalizio.
What's going on, everyone?
And today we are talking about two Survivor episodes, being episodes 9 and 10, 10 and 11?
10 and 11, I think.
10 and 11, let's go with
Yeah.
that. But being last week's day before Thanksgiving and this past week's, which was yesterday, because this is being recorded on December 2nd. And a lot happened. We did not get a chance to record last week because of Thanksgiving and a lot of stuff going on, but that just gives us double the stuff to talk about today. So, Andrew, how's it going?
It's going good, man. It's been 2 weeks since we last recorded, but
Yeah.
look, we missed a pretty big episode last week, and without giving everything away in the first 5 seconds, obviously I'm assuming everyone who's listening already knows what happened, but wow, like we finally got a big monumental moment we were begging for, and it took us a little over a week, but we're here talking about it.
We finally got the vote out of, the big proportions that we've been waiting for this whole season, that we've been begging everyone to kind of open up their eyes and just understand, okay, you know what? Maybe don't just vote out the easy vote. Maybe make a move and actually get out someone who is a big threat. And they did so in taking out probably the biggest threat this whole season.
I think you could say that.
Yeah.
And again, the biggest frustration, the biggest source of frustration for us was just that the game was very clearly tipping in one direction. And look, maybe we were a little ignorant to think that they had lost control and they were just going to whittle away one by one, and there was still plenty of time to make the move. But it was kind of going very firm in one direction. And not that we had bias one way or the other of like this person we wanted to win or this person wanted to win, but I wanted to see someone actually shake up the game. And I was starting to get those doubts that it was ever going to happen this season.
Yeah.
So a big move like that actually is a big dividing rod here, and it actually changes the direction of everything going. And it was exciting. It's good for TV. It's good for the franchise. Unfortunate for Shan, who got voted out. Arguably the strongest player of the season and a very deserving winner had she made it to the end. But look, it was a great episode and a very exciting change of pace that we've had from just boring vote out after boring vote out.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I saw a lot of things on Twitter. I was like, this is the classic, Survivor blindside episode, because there was not a lot of advantages, going around and everything. And, that's the one thing we've had a problem with this whole season has been there's a lot of stuff in play. And not having advantages is different than, I don't know where I was going with that. One sec. And not having advantages kind of taking up the entire episode makes it a lot more, it gives it the chance to, focus on the players themselves. And that's one thing that like I said, we've had the problem with this season, because there was a lot of episodes or a lot of moments where it just seemed like they were focusing on the advantages. So I think having an episode that had a moment as big as this, where they voted, if Shannon made it to the end, she would have won. So they took out the winner of the first half of this season. I think you can't argue with that.
No, not at all. And it's funny you talk about advantages, because 2 of the last 3 vote outs, the person's gone home with an idol in their pocket, which is wild, because we've seen James go home with 2. We've seen occasional people go home with idols. More often than not, people play the idol when they don't need it. As we saw in the second episode last night, there was another advantage. Xander played his extra vote, ultimately didn't need it. So that is usually what happens, is people playing advantages and it being wasted, as opposed to pocketing it and then getting blindsided and never getting to use it. But certainly a very, very needed change of pace, like we mentioned for this episode. And I agree that Shan, for sure, had she made it to the end, would have been, I think, a runaway winner.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it from maybe the second or third episode. It was pretty clear. I hope it was pretty obvious to everyone else, but I think at least we were pretty on it. If it wasn't, is that look, Ricard's path to winning is he has to go through Shan. Like they're working together, but there's no way he wins unless he makes the move to take her out first before she turns on him, because she's going to at some point. I know
Yeah.
that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she really was loyal to him and that they were going to be final two, whatever, right? But it seemed like she was going to work with him until she knew, hey, I can't win this game if he's still in. So I'm going to make the move on him first. And good on him for not letting that happen.
Yeah, exactly. He was kind of in the beginning of the season, he was just kind of sitting back and looking at everything that she did and just kind of taking credit for everything. There was that one tribal where he kind of took credit for everything that Shan had done. And I forget what episode that was. I think it was 3 when they voted Brad out, but I'm not sure. And I remember the two of us were just very, not upset, but we were just kind of taken aback at how he approached that. And the fact that he finally realized, he's got to play his own game. And the only way to do that would be to vote Shan out. It was, good on him for actually understanding what he has to do in order to win. And now he's a threat to win now. I would say as of right now, it's probably between him and Xander, with Erica kind of right on the cusp.
Which is funny because Xander and Erica were
on the
as
bottom
as you could be just 2 weeks ago, right?
But that's the thing. If you're on the bottom and you manage to survive as long as Xander has, especially, it's because you've been playing really well. And you think about it, he has played really well the last few weeks.
Yeah, look, right now he's sitting, final 6?
Yeah.
And he still has an idol. And I believe either the 6 or the 5, or it might be this next week's episode where it's the last time he can use it.
I thought it was 5.
So, all right, so sure. He's got to make a choice then. But
they did show in the preview for next week's episode that Danny and Deshaun are looking for idols.
Yeah, and
so
we've had 2 return to the game, and I was surprised in yesterday's episode that we didn't have more people searching for idols. Maybe they did; they just didn't show it on the edit. But
yeah, maybe
you knew Nasir went home with it, so. One had to be returned to the game.
From what I've kind of noticed from the show is I don't think they show people looking for idols unless they actually find one.
Yeah, that's true. So you got to figure people are probably looking for idols.
They probably looked, but they couldn't find anything.
Right.
So, yeah, Shan was voted out this past one, and then yesterday we had a completely different type of episode where it was major game-changing mechanics were put in place that kind of completely changed tribal, which is not something that normally happens. And I remember you specifically saying that you wanted to talk about the twist that was put in place. So why don't you explain that?
We're talking about the what happened to Deshaun?
Yeah, do or die, okay.
Yeah. So it's funny because if you know the Monty Hall problem, which is exactly what he was faced, ultimately, you're given a choice of 3 doors, the surprise behind one door. You pick one. The host knows which one of the 3 that you didn't, or one of the 2 that you didn't pick doesn't have it. They reveal it. Now it's essentially a 50-50 shot. Do you keep yours or do you swap? And the math says that you're supposed to swap. And it's funny that Deshaun ultimately didn't, and it saved him. So kind of defying the odds there. But ultimately, I think if we go back a little bit to the actual challenge itself, Jeff comes out and says, hey, if you want to opt out of the challenge, you can. No harm, no foul. Obviously, you don't have a shot of immunity. And if you think you need immunity, you don't have it. But if you do play, the first person who drops out of the challenge is facing this do or die. I'm thinking to myself, if this was me on the beach, there's no way am I playing that challenge. I get the upside of you potentially winning immunity, but the risks far outweigh the rewards. And I would not want to be in a spot like Deshaun. And it made me think for a moment, and maybe this is galaxy brain Andrew here, but what a risky play. If he did it and through the challenge, it didn't look like he was necessarily trying that hard. I don't think he was
I
giving
don't
it
think
away.
he did. No.
But what if he knew, hey, look, if we go to tribal tonight, obviously if he outlasted Erica or whoever else, then they would be in the do or die, and maybe the vote is irrelevant, right? But what if he's thinking, hey, I don't have the votes tonight. I'll take my chances with the fate in my own hands.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to, like, if he ever came out and said, yeah, I threw that challenge for the do or die opportunity, or if it just happened that way.
I had that same thought too after when I was thinking about it. It's the perfect opportunity. If you're on the bottom, you can just throw the challenge and you have the chance of being completely safe. And then, someone else has to be voted out. And it's a huge risk.
Yeah.
But you also have a chance to survive until another tribal.
Right.
So,
and here's your thing though. It doesn't really add much to your resume, right? Your survivor resume.
If Deshaun
gets to the end, he can't be like, I survived.
Challenge, that's nothing.
No, I mean, like, if he gets to the end, he can't be like, well, I survived the do or die. It's like, great, you won a game of chance. Like, that doesn't prove
congrats, you chose a box.
Everything else I got you here to the end, we'll give you credit for it, but that move alone was total luck.
No, yeah, of course it was. It's like literally, like you said, Monty Hall problem math dictates that he shouldn't have done what he did.
Right.
So that's not him, out thinking everything. That's him getting completely dumb luck. But yeah,
it's so funny. I saw like Christian, former Survivor player on Twitter, was just like, "Yep, of course Xander's going to be the guy to do it. He's a computer science guy. Like, if anyone would knew what it was, because he was saying,
he said, Monty Hall problem. Yeah. No, I was really thrown off by that, just because I was thinking, like, man, that could have been a huge game changer if it was, say it was Xander, and he was convinced he was going home. He didn't have an idol because he's been on the bottom for so long, and he did that. If they bring that back for future seasons, I feel like that can have a huge impact, because I don't, like you said, I don't think Deshaun threw it, because I don't know how much time in between Jeff explaining the challenge and them actually doing the challenge there is, but I can't imagine there's enough time for him to concoct a plan like that.
Well, yeah.
Plus,
you're right. It's probably not.
I don't think he thought he was on the bottom. He wasn't convinced he was going home. He was still.
I don't know.
He was still trying to fight for his life.
Yeah, but if you go back to the beginning of last night's episode, like, immediately they get back from trial after voting out Shan, and he's kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place, thinking, like, do I just own that move? Like, yeah, I didn't want to vote out Shan, but I had to do it, and I'm putting my stamp on it, I'm proud of it. Or do I feel bad about it? Do I have to make amends with people? And he kind of straddled the line there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you've been playing game within the game online along with the season, that's actually the strategy test that Jeff posed last week. It says, like, if you make a big move, do you own it and just say, yeah, like, sorry, I did that? Or do you go on an apology tour? And I'm not so sure that Deshaun did either, which I thought, oh, okay, this is going to put him in a bad spot, because he hasn't exactly just been like, yep, I'm very proud of that move. I did what I did. I'm aligned with the people I am. We'll make it work. Or he didn't be like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, and try and maintain his alliances. But then it was funny because, like, right after that, they were talking about Deshaun, and then Xander was talking about, like, how safe he feels he's in the power alliance. And I was like, oh, this is just teasing for Xander to go home tonight.
Yeah. Well, they always seem to do that, but I feel this season they've done a lot better with editing like that, I think, where I think they understood that they were kind of giving a lot of things away earlier in the show, because that entire mindset is based off of the fact that they've done that before. They've shown people being like, oh yeah, I'm not going home tonight, I'm fine, and then they go home 10 minutes later.
Well, look, even if you want to talk about editing at a more, like, realistic, linear level, last night's episode, Tribal Council started at like 8:37. Thinking, like, well, Deshaun has to be safe. He ended up being safe, but the time, they if you look at it like almost too literally, you're like, well, look, they're going, they have to kill 25 minutes. He's probably going to do the challenge. He's going to be safe, and then they're going to have a live tribal for 15 minutes. They're going to vote someone out. Obviously, tribal went a completely different direction, and they took up 10, 12 minutes of time on actually a pretty interesting conversation that needed to be had. But even then, like if you're watching at home and you're cognizant of like, hey, this is a 1 hour episode, and normally they don't reveal who's going home until like 8:52 or
Yeah.
8:55. Like you can almost game it that way too, which is it's a battle the editors and producers have to go up against.
Yeah.
But like,
There's only so many things you can do to kind of not spoil it without cramming everything into a 2 minute span.
right.
So yeah, I think I watched it on Paramount Plus, and for me it was a little bit more obvious just because he chose the right box at about with I don't know 5-6 minutes left in the episode. And before that, I was thinking, yeah, he's got to choose. He's got to choose the right one here because what are they going to do? Spend 5 minutes, of him giving the actual apology tour or something? So, yeah. But either way, I think what are your thoughts like on the do or die thing in general?
I'm torn. I thought
Yeah.
it was a neat twist, but I really don't like that someone's game could come down to that. Now, look, if it's someone who was on the outs all along, and I'm going to say someone like Heather, who, by the way, at this point, I think she's firmly cemented herself as a final three person. They're just going to take it to the end.
She's done
She really just
nothing.
hasn't done much. Like
She hasn't done
no
anything.
fault of her own, right? She's not like a bad player, but she hasn't really been involved on the right side of any votes. She's just kind of there, so she's not going to win unless something drastic happens consecutively for the next few tribals.
Well, before you go on, I just want to say that I read there was an interview with Shan after she was like recently after she got voted out after the before Thanksgiving episode,
Yeah.
and she was saying that Heather kind of just didn't do anything at all this whole season.
And look, we talked about it with Heather even a couple weeks ago, right? Where she's like, well, why are you going to throw my name? Because Shan said, oh, let's vote Heather. And that weird vote where Nasir went home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or excuse me, I think that was maybe the one before where Tiffany went home.
It was the double vote.
Yeah. So then
yeah,
she flips it, and then it just seems like she didn't really know what she was doing. But anyway, so let me bring it back to your question.
Okay.
Originally about the do or die. If someone like Heather makes that move, right, knowing that, hey, look, this is my Hail Mary here, then I kind of like it, right? But Deshaun's played a pretty strong game, and I would have hated to see his game come down to he had enough balls to participate in the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, he was first out, but 2 people opted out entirely, so technically he finished ahead of them. And then a game of chance is what sent him home. Yeah. I feel like you lose all power in the game.
Well, and the biggest thing with this game is that you have to be voted out in order to be, to leave the game. And I think switching that to basically a game of chance of you stay in, you're knocked out, kind of takes away from the entire voting process. And I said this to you.
And it's pretty arbitrary where it happened too. Because if they did it like, we're going to do it at the first tribal after the merge from now on, like fine, then it's a thing. But they just randomly were like, oh, by the way, final 6 potentially could be out.
I think doing that at this time period was a terrible decision. I think, like you said, first tribal after the merge, I think that's the time to do it when there's still a lot of people. But when you've come this far, you can't do it then.
Ultimately, I think I'm going to say I don't love it. Maybe if they tweak it in the future, maybe, hey, a game of chance, and if you lose, you automatically have 1 or 2 votes cast against you, even if no one votes for you, right?
Yeah, I think
something like that. And then you could still technically give vote. Like if someone says, oh, well, they already got 2 votes, like let's just stack the numbers there. Then you could technically still go home, but at least you were voted out. I don't know.
Yeah, I think having the entire vote and the entire tribal based on that is a lot. And I said this to you last night. I feel like it would be different if they still voted someone out, even if he was knocked out. Because like I said, it takes away from the entire voting process. And even though he actually won and survived, and then Liana was voted out, it's still, I don't know, it just seems too much. It seems too extreme,
I agree. So let's talk about the Liana vote, though. because her and Shan seemed like they were destined to run the table, and now they're out in back-to-back weeks. So, first off, what do you think about the vote? And secondly, how do you think this shapes the game going forward, and who's going to come out of it on top?
I think they kind of went the safe route, but at the same time, Erica and Xander the entire time were talking about how you don't want to completely blow up your alliance and vote out someone who you think you can trust. Instead, vote out someone you know you can't, which was Liana. But the person they were talking about, you don't want to vote out because they're in your alliance, was Ricard. And that was the one thing I did not understand about this whole episode, was they were talking about Ricard as if he was one of their day one people. Xander said, like, when I think it was Danny and Shan came up to him and said that they want to vote out Ricard again. And he was like, I don't know if I can do that. Ricard's one of my own. He's part of my alliance. I was like, since when?
I don't know if you caught it, but I think that was more posturing than anything else. Xander also mentioned him and Erica were talking about themselves and said, you want to keep. They took a page out of the Tony Vlacho's book, The Meat Shield, right?
Yeah.
So you want to keep another threat bigger than you in the game to the last possible moment, because as long as that other threat's in the game, people are constantly looking to dethrone them.
Yeah.
They're not looking at you. So I think that's kind of what Xander's thinking. Like, he may say, oh, I'm really tight with Ricard. We're voting together. I trust him. But really all he's thinking is, look, if Ricard stays in this game, people are going to constantly want him out, and they won't even be talking about me. And I'll just skate on, which is brilliant, which is exactly what you should be doing.
The
only problem is if you get to the end with Ricard and then you think he can't win, then you blew your chance.
No, that's the problem with it, because it's not like Ricard loses every single challenge. He's won 2 immunity challenges. So it's not out of question for him to go on a bit of a run to the end of the season and win out, and then all of a sudden he's in the finals. And then your plan backfires like that. So I feel like now would have been the perfect chance to take him out, because he didn't have immunity, and he wouldn't have had the numbers to do it, because all it would have taken was one of them flipping.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what. If Ricard was voted out, I don't know how secure someone like Xander and Erica are moving forward. Heather, we've already said, is a wild card. She could flip at any moment, and she originally played with Danny and Deshawn.
Yeah.
So she might just flip back with the two of them plus Liana. And Xander and Erica are like, the only way they would have survived that is if Erica won immunity and Xander played his idol, or vice versa, right? Like, he won and then gave her his idol. Just because I don't think that they're technically aligned with Heather, but I don't know how much they trust her to just get in line like a good soldier and vote with them every time. So I think they're playing the numbers game.
All right, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It just seemed weird to me. And like you said, maybe I just didn't catch it, but I was just kind of confused. I was like, they're playing it like Ricard's one of their own members of their alliance when they've been aligned with him for one vote, And
I don't even know if you would say they were aligned with him. I think they just had a common enemy.
Yeah.
So, which again, credit to Ricard for that move. I still can't believe it. And look,
I can't either.
Look, Shan's been an easy target on this podcast, not because we have anything against her, but just because she's been the favorite, right? So we've wanted to see some traction towards at least people being aware that she was the favorite and potentially making a move, as opposed to just, let's not do anything. Let's just let her pick us off one by one. And that's kind of the vibe it was, right? That's why it seemed like we wanted Shan out a bunch, but I just really wanted people to actually start playing the game. And they did.
Yeah, that was our big problem. It was the fact that Shan had been playing so well. She absolutely destroyed the pre-merge part of this game to the point where we were like, oh my God, she has to go, because otherwise she's just going to run the whole game. And then there was the episode that had the double tribal council, and both people that were voted out were people that were the easy votes, or not even the easy votes, but like, because I guess Nasir wasn't the easy vote, but just someone that shouldn't have been voted out if they had been looking at like the entirety of the game, and then voting Evie out was just the easy vote.
Right.
Then. because she didn't have the numbers to stay in. So that's why we were so annoyed, was because nobody was kind of looking at it as, oh my God, Shan can really win this game.
Right.
And
Well,
then
I
they
think
finally woke
they may
up.
have known it, but they weren't doing
They weren't
anything
doing
to actually
anything
stop
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the big problem we had. But now she's gone, and now Liana's gone, and it's very up in the air. And I really think at this point, every single person can win the game except for Heather.
I'd buy that.
Yeah.
I could totally see that.
I can see any single one of them.
I think
'Cause
Heather's a pretty safe bet to make it to the end,
So-
unless they all have a pretty good rapport and they say, "Hey, look, let's have one of those seasons where we just want the best players to get to the end," which
Yeah.
happens every 5 or so seasons.
Yeah.
Where it's smart plays to take a goat that you know is not going to get any votes. They're going to finish in third, blah blah blah. But every once in a while, you get like a, "Hey, this person is not really a good player. They don't deserve to sit at the final 3, even if
Yeah.
it means my chances of winning are less," which I'd like to see, but I don't know.
Yeah. So if that was the case, then what do you think the final 3 would be? Erica, Xander, Ricard?
They teased Deshaun making a final 3 pack with Xander, and then Erica wasn't with them, but Xander's mentioned her as the other part of that final 3 last night. I don't know how realistic that is. That could just be Deshaun playing the game and trying to scope things out and maybe find a weakness. But I'll tell you what, I really don't know, because I thought, look, the vote went towards Liana last night, but it got to a weird point, like 5 or so minutes in airtime, not real time.
Yeah.
Before they went to tribal last night, where they're saying like, well, what if Erica flips? Like, I don't know, she's kind of untrustworthy. I was like, oh Jesus, this Ricard's like, we got to flip on her right now moment.
Yeah.
And I was like,
like a last second, okay, do this.
Which honestly would have been a really good move. He
Yeah,
got Liana out, which is one more. I don't even know if Liana would have disrupted his game that much. I feel like him taking out Shan kind of shell-shocked her, at least for a few days.
Well, she was not happy.
No, of course not. But
and I'll tell you,
I'm really curious. The obvious guess would say, well, Ricard's going to go ahead and win this game, which is funny because we were like trashing him early on. We're like, he's just a puppet. Shan's the driving the bus, and he's just kind of along for the ride. But like now, he's fully grabbed control of the game.
Yeah,
and it's the kind of thing where we said like he can do this, but I don't know if he will. And
I don't know if he
we
will.
Were wrong. He did.
Yeah, and I think it was Xander who, when Danny and Deshaun were telling Xander they wanted to vote Ricard out, Xander made a good point in saying Ricard's the only one that's really made a move. Because you think about it, if you look at big moves so far in the game, Shan voting out Shan, easy number 1, and then number 2, I guess Nasir. What's like the next biggest blindside after that?
Oh, voting out Nasir. Okay.
Yeah, I would say that
Maybe.
has to be it.
Yeah. But she's not going to get any credit, but Erica had a heavy hand in that Shan vote out too. We didn't really talk about it, but it was her idea to split the votes.
Yeah.
Between, was it Liana who got 3 votes?
Yeah.
Shan got 3 votes. And then they played that perfectly, because as soon as they each had 3 votes, it went to a revote. The 2 votes cast against Erica didn't count
because that was just Shan and Liana.
And when Shan didn't play her idol, then everyone was like, well, this is it. Let's just put all the votes on Shan.
Mm-hmm.
And they played it to perfection.
Yeah.
They did. That was
they really
kind of
did.
Erica's plan. I don't know how many people caught that, but
the one thing I will say is that you at the beginning picked Erica to win. And to me, that pick is looking better and better every episode, because I really think Shan was the only one that understood just how well Erica's playing. I don't think anyone else kind of realizes, except for maybe Xander.
Yeah.
No one else really understands how good of a position Erica's in.
I would disagree. I would say that like Danny and Deshaun wanted to throw a challenge pre-merge to get her out.
That wasn't because of how well she was playing, though. That was because she completely just tried to throw people under the bus to vote someone out.
Yeah, and which, look, I think she's coming on strong late, but I think I personally appreciate these types of games where you don't have to be a big flamboyant, big move,
Yeah,
bold player early. As long as you kind of ride out the waves
yeah.
a
Well, you
little
think
bit,
about it,
and
all the big
then
moves that were made before the merge were by the Ua tribe, and there's only one person left from that tribe.
right. So you could say Ricard can get credit for all of that, but I would say a lot of the big moves in this game
Were by
were
Shan.
right, were coordinated by Shan, and you can't give her credit at the final tribal because she won't be
Exactly.
participating in it. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's why a lot of players previously who don't necessarily start off guns blazing, Michelle Fitzgerald, Natalie
Mhm.
Anderson, Jeremy Collins, like they've won their seasons by just kind of existing pre-merge and then really hitting it into high gear late,
Yeah.
which is I think a really good strategy.
So when you talk about that, the one thing I think of is the first season that Russell Hantz was in, when he kind of they got to the merge and it was his tribe of 4 against the tribe of 8, and they just kind of mowed everyone down. But there was one guy whose name I forget, but I remember he got like basically no screen time at all pre-merge, and then post-merge he just kind of survived the whole time because he kept on winning immunity after immunity after immunity and
Yeah.
made it to like the final 4 until he finally lost and then got voted out.
Yeah, it's same as what Colby did in season 2, Survivor
Yeah,
Australian Outback.
exactly.
Like he didn't really play that great of a game other than win a ton of immunity challenges. And when he
Yeah.
got to the end, Tina wiped the floor with him because she's the only who actually had gameplay. Yeah, so I
Mhm.
totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, the one thing I really do like about this season is the fact, like how you said, there's no kind of runaway winner. Like I said, there's 5 people now out of the 6 who could potentially win this game. Like
Yeah,
if you were to
which
take
is usually the case. You're watching. Maybe these 3 people can win, but
it,
for
or
5 of 6
yeah,
people,
it's like I just think back to like the season that Ben won, where you're just thinking, okay, so it's these 6 people, and then there's Ben, and yeah, he's definitely gonna win if he gets to the end, but he's not going to because he's not gonna win. Then he plays idle after idle after idle and ends up getting to
right?
the end and winning. So it's not like there's a bunch of people who are basically just like cannon fodder for the eventual winner to get past. It's a lot of people who have the potential to win that we have no idea.
Yeah, and this is one thing about this season that I have noticed more and more is that there are some specific strong players who actually separate themselves, but generally speaking, it's a very level and balanced cast where you don't have like a top tier of
Yeah,
players, like a top 3 or 4, and then everyone else is kind of in the middle, and you have a few bottom feeders, right? It seems like everyone is,
you kind of like a top half and a bottom half.
and the bottom half is really like 3 people. It's not even a half.
Yeah,
It's
it's like all the
so
all the
I don't know.
pre-merge people, not even all the pre-merge people, just like half the pre-merge people and Heather.
Yeah, I would say the quote unquote bottom were Tiffany, Evie, and Heather, but to really no
I
fault of
wouldn't
their
even
own.
say Evie was on there.
I think Evie made some big moves post merge that kind of gave her some attention, but I never really thought that she had a strong standing. That doesn't mean she's not a
Mm,
good player. I just don't think she was a in that you consider in that top tier of likely winners. Just because I
okay,
never
yeah,
really saw a path for her to get to the end. As
yeah,
soon
that's true.
as soon as Liana bailed on her and Tiffany to play with Shan at the merge, I kind of really threw those 2 under the bus. And again, like I said, it's nothing about their gameplay. If things had turned out differently, I think they had the capability to get there, but I never put them in that top tier just because the game didn't set up for them to
Yeah.
actually make it there.
Well, and I think Liana realized very early on that Evie could be a threat to win, so that's why she just kind of flipped and never gave her the opportunity to
Yeah,
have a chance to win.
sure. All right. So like look, hot take right now, time. We haven't done this
Okay.
in a while. You got to pick one person to go home next week and one person who you think absolutely will not be going home. Give me 2
So
names.
one person. So how about we
You know we're going to be
exclude?
wrong, by the way, too. We're going to be absolutely wrong.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to say the person who I think absolutely will not be going home is Danny, and the person who I think is going to go home is Erica. And I'm sorry.
No, I was debating saying Erica too.
Yeah.
So for the sake of a different answer, I'm going to take the easy that Heather's probably not going home because
Mhm.
they're just going to carry her to the end. I know it's a lazy pick, but I need one thing on the board. And if who I think could be going home, I'm going to say Danny.
Mhm.
And not because he's will have done anything wrong, right? He just won an immunity this past episode. He's still pretty tight with a good number of people, but I think he is a little more suspicious of half of the remaining contestants and not willing to work with them. Like he seems to be like, we can't play with Ricard, we can't play with Xander, and that inflexibility may just put him on the wrong side of the numbers just by coincidence. So I think that may blow up in his face.
That's a good point. He has and he's been the one that's kind of spearheaded the whole we need to get Ricard out rebellion. So if Ricard all of a sudden just decides to take control and say, yeah, I'm done with this, he needs to go, then I could see that happening.
That's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I can see Xander, Xander, Erica, and Heather all working with him and targeting either Ricard or Shan next week. Maybe
the one thing I can say is I do not think Danny and Deshaun would turn on each other. Yeah, I really don't think they would.
Ones.
Yeah,
they've been tight since literally the first day on the beach.
Exactly, I don't think they would, and I think in the preview it did show that. I think it was Danny was saying they were on the bottom, so I think it's right from the start. It kind of looks like it would be 2v4, but obviously there's ways to get around that because
we don't
Xander's
even know if there's going to be an idol play.
Exactly, and Xander's,
it looks like Danny may have even found an idol, or at least they were showing him standing, and they highlighted it right underneath a log or something. I don't know if he actually finds.
They're gonna end up. They're gonna show that he's gonna walk right past it, and someone like Erica's gonna end up finding it and just completely change everything.
Right, and so the shot in the dark is now out, so that can't affect it. But I don't know if you noticed, but Jeff still says at every tribal, if anyone has an advantage or a hidden immunity idol. What other advantages are still in the game other than extra votes, which have now all been used? Am I missing something, or like is there something else?
Maybe he was just saying that for shot in the dark,
or maybe there's an advantage that was made available at an immunity challenge, like the one Xander didn't get, or something that's available on the beach that hasn't been found. You're right. So
and and the producers know where everything is.
Right.
So
and Jeff doesn't know who. Well, Jeff is obligated to say it. He knows if people have stuff or not, I would assume. Yeah. But he still has to say that, right? So maybe there are advantages in this game that people haven't found that we as the viewers aren't aware about, and Jeff has to go through the motions and say that every tribal.
Yeah. I think it kind of depends on what he says next week, because as of right now, Shot in the Dark is out. So the only thing we think would be left would be Xander's idol.
And potentially something else that's found.
And potentially something else.
How do we think that would have played out? Because we didn't see it actually come into play this season. I only think the Shot in the Dark tried to get used.
It was Sydney tried to use it to save herself.
Was that the only time?
That was the only time.
Yeah, so
I don't, and the thing is, I don't.
Do you draw a parchment that says safe and then you immediately play that when Jeff asks that, or does Jeff pull out something that says, "Oh, by the way, there's 3
what happened is you just take the parchment out and then you open it at tribal." So I think that's what he's talking about, because when he said that, she opened it up. Yeah.
Huh. Oh, right. Because it said safe or not safe, right?
Yeah.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah.
So she played it before the reading of the votes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. You're right. So I had forgotten about that. That's exactly how that plays out. Okay.
Yeah. So I would think next week he would just say if anyone has an idol, which, yeah, if Shot in the Dark's gone, then unless something else comes into play.
I don't even want to know.
So here's a question: with Shot in the Dark being out of the season now, do you think they bring that back for another season, or are they just going to write that off as like something they tried and then it just kind of didn't impact the game?
No, I think it's worth keeping it. If it doesn't impact the game, it doesn't impact the game, right?
Yeah.
But certainly the fact that you can lose your vote if you're not safe affects things. And I
Yeah.
do actually want to mention something because it's happened now 2 or 3 times this season. And I don't think they haven't either edited well or maybe the contestants aren't even aware of it. But how many people were at Tribal last night?
7.
7. So the vote got to 4-3, and Jeff said 1 vote left. They panned to Ricard, who had a weird look on his face, confusion. Like, I think he was doing the numbers, like,
Yeah.
why is there one more vote? And no one else seemed to be like, well, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe they all knew Xander was using his extra vote. Maybe that was the last time he could have used it, and we just didn't know that. But I was like, I was a little bit shocked that people weren't more caught off guard by, hey, there's 7 of us, there's 7 votes. Why are there 8 votes?
Yeah. And it was like that for when Shan used hers to tie the Nasir and Heather one. Everyone was just kind of sitting there like, yep, and here comes a 6th vote for 5 people.
Right. And the only other time the extra vote was used was, I believe, Deshaun used his the same time
to vote Evie
Sydney.
out.
No, when Sydney used the shot.
Yes, but he voted for Evie.
Well, yeah, but he used 2 votes. She lost a vote, so it washed out. It was 10 or 11 people, right? So 11 people were voting. Or maybe it was 12. I think Erica came back and was able to vote in that travel, right? When she was on exile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Either way, that's something I'm always. I know I'm sitting at home, sitting in the heat or the air conditioning. I'm well fed and hydrated, right? So I could do math like that, and maybe being deserted on an island for 3 weeks, it's a little slower. But I always
weirdly enough, I would take the guess and say that being a deserted on an island for 3 weeks does something to your brain.
You don't say, really. All right. We've covered a lot tonight. Obviously, we had 2 episodes to dive into, and there's still so much gameplay ahead of us. But I think we've exhausted what we can get into tonight.
I think so, yeah.
And we'll definitely be back next week to discuss the final 5, previewing the finale. I'm assuming they're going to carry those final 5 into the finale.
I would think so.
Unless they pull a double elimination, which they haven't teased next week. But so that'll be what we see for the final 2 episodes of the season. Man, this flew by.
It really did. I'm surprised, honestly. It feels like we've been doing this for a couple weeks, and here we are at the finale.
Yep. All right. So for Alex and Andrew, it's been 39 Days podcast, and we'll see you guys next week.